Hi, this is Veronica, foster mom, back with you with another chronicle. So today I'm going to chronicle the story of O. O was a 4-year-old who was placed with us a couple years ago. And I will tell you, O was only placed with us for one night, guys. But I'm telling his story because of all the foster children that we've had. This one left the most lasting impression on me and my family. And you'll hear why in just a moment. So I'm going to tell O's story. Now, his story actually starts with his siblings. So I got a call one day from DCS and said, hey, can you take these two siblings? And I was like, sure. And they asked me to take them for one night. They had a permanent placement coming up, so they asked me to take them for one night. So I have these two children, very sweet, super, mannerable, just everything. And so the next night I get a call from DCS and they said, hey, the two children that we brought you yesterday, well, we found out they have another sibling, a 4-year-old, and we were hoping that you could take the 4-year-old too, again, just for one night, and then tomorrow we'll pick up all three children, right? So I will tell you that at this time I did have other children placed with me. So I think either 2 or 3 other children with us at the time. But so this would have made a house full for me. But I was thinking it was already pretty, late in the evening. It was probably around maybe 8 or so. And they said one night and they were going to pick up the 3 in the morning. So I was like, hey, I can do this for one night, right? So I said, sure. And then when I hang up the phone, so by then, like I said, it's like 8 o'clock at night. So it was actually bedtime for the children that were currently here. And so, I'm placing all of them to bed and I was super excited. And I told the two siblings, I said, hey, your little brother's coming. And they were like, what? And I said, yeah, I just got a call from DCS and they asked if I could take him too. And they said, oh no, like their face dropped, guys. Seriously. They were like, oh no. I was like, what? And they were like, he's so bad. They said, you do not want him here. And I was like, guys, it can't be that bad. And they were like, no, he's bad. They say he hits us and he says bad words and all this other stuff. So I gotta tell you, that was my first, indication that I was gonna be in for a wild ride that night. But I reassured them. I said, he'll be fine. When he gets here, I'm going to put him to bed, just like you guys are going to bed. And then in the morning, the worker will be back to get you. So reassured them, put them to bed. So by the time the worker and O got here, it was probably around, I don't know, maybe 9 or so, maybe a little after. And so again, O was 4, but he did not act like a 4-year-old. Okay. He had a deep voice. He, when he walked in, he had this little strut, this little tough guy. He had these braids in his hair. So he definitely did not act like a 4-year-old. So, but again, he was 4, and so he was scared. He was nervous about being in this house. He didn't know us. He didn't know, who these people were. So instead of putting him straight to bed, I did let him stay up a little while. I gave him a little snack, put him at the table, and let him eat his snack. And he was just kind of talking with us and asking us questions and things like that. So he was so cute, guys. So now at the time we had an adult son living with us. And so when my son came into the room, my adult son came into the room and saw this little boy, like they locked eyes and they just connected. You could just tell they were the kindred spirits, right? So I will also say, I think most of us as parents, we know that we have that one child that isn't like the others. They may be a little more rough around the edges. So this is my son, and he knows that I say this about him. And so, yeah, so he came in and he really hit it off with O. They were like two peas in a pod. So he sat at the table with them, and they were just sitting there just talking and having a good old time for a couple hours, actually. So meanwhile, my husband and I, we kind of stepped aside since they hit it off so well. We allowed them to kind of hang out while I was getting, other stuff ready for bed and stuff, getting the bed ready, bedding and stuff like that. And so at one point, what are them? How you got them? And I'm like, what is he talking about? Now we know 4-year-olds don't talk proper English. So it wasn't the fact, that it was incorrect grammar. I was just curious as to what he was talking about. So I peeked in the room and, he said it again, what are them? And so he's grabbing my son's muscle and he's grabbing his arm. He was like, what, man, what are them? And so my son said, that's a muscle. And he was like, how you got them? And my son said, because, I go to the gym, I work out, he was like, wow, man, you strong. And then my son's like, yeah, I'm strong. And then he's like, can you pick up this table? And my son's like, yeah, I can pick up this table. And he was like, what about a person? Can you pick up a person? And my son's like, yeah, I can pick up some people. And then he was like, what about a car? Can you pick up a car? And then what, can you pick up a house? Like he went down this list of stuff trying to determine how strong my son was. So meanwhile, me and my husband are around the corner in the kitchen cracking up. It was so funny. What are them? That will forever be one of our little catchphrases that we say in our family. But then later, they're still talking. And I kept hearing Franklin, Franklin this, Franklin that. And, you could tell they were talking about, I thought they were talking about TV. So I said, I told my husband, I said, oh, they're talking about Franklin the turtle. I was like, maybe I should put that show on or something. And then my husband said, they are not talking about Franklin the turtle. He said, they are talking about Franklin from Grand Theft Auto. Now, guys, that totally caught me off guard because, as I said, again, this is a 4-year-old talking to a grown man, my son. I'm like, how does a 4-year-old know about Grand Theft Auto? And now, I barely even know about Grand Theft Auto, right? Except I know that it's a mature video game, right? So anyways, so then my husband was cracking up at me about the whole Franklin thing. He was like, that is not a kid. It is a grown person masquerading as a 4-year-old. So anyways, I gave O and my son time to talk and, but finally, like I said, by then, it's been a couple hours. So now it's pushing probably, getting close to 11. And I said, okay, oh, sorry, but you really got to get ready for bed. And so he was like, I don't want to go to bed. So he was really reluctant, but I finally coaxed him. We were able to, get his PJs on and get him cleaned up for bed, brush his teeth and all that stuff. And so I was going to put him in one of our guest rooms, right? We have pull-out beds. And so he didn't want to sleep in there. And so my son said, hey, man, he was like, how about we sleep here in the family room? He said, I'll sleep on the sofa. And, he said, mom will get us a pull out. Because at the time I had an ottoman that pulls out to a little cot, right? So, so I pulled the little ottoman out, pulled it out, and I was like, hey, you sleep here. And, I told him my son was going to sleep on the sofa and they could have the family room. So then O was like, okay, I'll do that. So I'm thinking everything's settled. All the other kids are fast asleep. Finally got my little 4-year-old in bed. And then I go to bed. Probably around 1 o'clock in the morning, maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, I hear this crying, right? And so I'm like, what in the world is going on? So I jump up, come running into the family room, and O's not in his bed. And then I go look in our guest room and he's in there with one of his siblings and he's crying. And I'm like, what's wrong, hon? And he was like, that man left me. He said, that man know I'm afraid of the dark. And he left me. He said, I was scared. And so, so now I laugh about it. After it happened, I laughed about it. At that time, I had to console him and had to tell him, I said, well, it's okay. I said, he probably got up in the middle of the night and went to his room and went to sleep. So, so at that point, I tried to put him back in the bed. He didn't want to go to his bed, or to the cot, and he wanted to stay and sleep with the sibling. Now, I got to tell you, I was really hesitant about it because, first of all, because of the reaction that his siblings had when they found out he was coming, right? So that always causes concern. But secondly, because whenever we have new placements, I don't allow the children to share a bed. And it maybe even be policy with some agencies that each child has their own bed. And to me, it just makes sense because, there are some children that come into custody and they're dealing with different issues, whether it's aggression, they're abusive towards other children, or, they have sexual issues. So they may act out on another child. So I don't allow children, just me as a rule, don't allow children to sleep in the same bed unless, there are extenuating circumstances, or if they've been with us for a while and I can kind of gauge, some of their behaviors. So in this case, I was really hesitant, but I did, again, I felt it was one of those extenuating circumstances because I did have a 4-year-old who's very scared, scared of the dark. And I asked the sibling, I said, hey, is it okay if he, stays here and sleeps with you? And so the sibling said, okay. So I did allow that to happen. And plus, again, it was for that one night. So put O to bed, and everybody finally got back to sleep. And I got to tell you guys, I was exhausted, right? Because this is 2:00 in the morning. Addressing this issue. So get everybody back to bed. Well, the next day, I had a house full of children. So I had maybe 6 children. And I work from home, so I still had to work. I didn't take that next day off. So I was trying to, set a plan for the activities for the kids for that day. So I had broken them up into groups. So this is after they've all gotten up, they've eaten breakfast, they brushed their teeth. And so now, got to keep them occupied until the caseworker came, to do pickup for 3 of my 6. And so, so I divided them up by age. So my older kids, I gave them some books, gave them some activities, some puzzles, and different things that they could work on. And I set them up at the counter and, to allow them so that they get something to do. Now, my younger ones, which this included O, so I had probably 3 littles. And then, so I gave them coloring books, like the jumbo crayons, and, just laid them out on the floor, and got the coloring books and coloring pages and said, okay, now you guys sit here, y'all color. And so, so they're all coloring, seem content, and I go into my office, right? And I start work. Well, about 5 minutes, after about 5 minutes, I heard like movement and, some murmuring or whatever. And so I'm like, okay, it's only been 5 minutes. What's going on? So I go and peek in on them, and there's O sitting on a chair. And so I said, oh, you're supposed to be coloring. Why aren't you? He was like, I can't do that. I was like, what do you mean you can't do that? Why can't? He was like, my hand hurt. He said, I was doing it, but my hand hurt. So I was like, okay. He's only been coloring for 5 minutes and his hand's hurting. Okay. All right. So anyways, I found something else for him to do. But I got to tell you guys, later on that evening, when my husband came home, I told my husband, I said, hey, it was so funny. I said, O was coloring today. And I said, he only did it for like 5 minutes. And then he stopped and he said his hand was hurting. And my husband said, look, I already told you. He said, that is not a 4-year-old. He said, that is a 54-year-old trapped inside a 4-year-old's body. And that man has arthritis. And here you are trying to get him to color for 5 minutes. So, guys, I don't know about you, but I thought that was hilarious. To this day, when I think about it, I laugh. And we still affectionately, lovingly, jokingly refer to O as the 54-year-old man trapped inside a 4-year-old's body. So I hope that wherever he is, that he still has that personality about him where he can bring people joy and laughter, but that he's also able to be a kid. So that is O's story. And I will share other stories. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for joining me.